Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Sports Insight with your host Alamdar Khan. And as you know, this show is focusing more and more about sports from all across the globe. You guys can definitely reach us on our social media handles, which is at the rate of Indus News Sports, and we can make it more interactive. And with regards to everything that you want to say and talk about, we would love to have you on the show, and we can further discuss on what's really happening. But anyways, I will instantaneously move on to the headlines of the day. Yes, Pakistan versus New Zealand. New Zealand eventually won by an inning and 176 runs in the second test. Sri Lanka versus South Africa. Yes, South Africa won by 10 wickets. This was also their second test. And yes, ex-lead Rhino skipper forced to retire at the age of 27 because of the concussions. We'll talk about Stevie Ward as soon as he announces his retirement. Yes, so we were talking about Pakistan versus New Zealand tour. Yes, New Zealand eventually came up to a point of defeating us really, really bad, in a very, very bad way. Why? We definitely need to look into the details for that. We just lost the second test as well, and New Zealand won by an inning and 176 runs. The irony of the matter is, where did Pakistan cricket team go wrong? Where is that technique that's keeping them away from proving themselves as someone out there who could actually be confident on pitches that are not of their home grounds? So for this, we have with us Tasneem Samar Khan joining us all the way from New Zealand. Tasneem, thank you so very much for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Alamdar.
So, Tasneem, let's start with the entire journey of how Pakistan cricket team went to New Zealand during the, obviously, COVID-19 situation is all across the globe these days, and it's one of the most technical things happening to most of the sportsmen. But going there, being in quarantine, then coming up to a situation that, not being able to practice because that was another thing that actually struck them. And then instantaneously coming on the T20 side, which obviously you personally attended those matches. So can you just tell us the whole idea? Because I still remember the first T20 match when we saw it, we could so easily tell that, Pakistan was totally unprepared for it. So where do you think everything went wrong for them?
Look, it's not a matter of one thing. I think it was a difficult tour from the outset. You are asking a group of men who are not necessarily very adept at playing in this part of the world to play against one of the most complete sides in world cricket today. As we know, just a short time ago, New Zealand got very close to the World Cup. They've been building up test competency for a very long time, probably since that fateful tour of New Zealand's in the UAE against Pakistan itself. And their T20 is coming along and developing as well. So it was always a difficult task from the outset. New Zealand pitches are notoriously difficult, and the Black Caps are exceptionally well equipped to play those pitches. Pakistan's story obviously began with quarantine. There were breaches that Pakistan did commit in that situation. And I think one of the difficulties is the concept of playing in COVID times. Pakistan went to England. However, the situation of a biosecure bubble was incredibly different to the situation that we have in New Zealand today.
True.
I do think that it was exceptionally frustrating for Pakistan. It was difficult psychologically. And just recently, we've seen the England team take a team psychologist with them to Sri Lanka. I think it's a very good move and very important in these very difficult and unprecedented times. So really, the story of the difficulty for Pakistan begins pre-tour. Now, with the quarantine breaches that Pakistan side committed, the New Zealand cricket were very adamant that they didn't want to see such breaches from touring teams. They'd struggled a little bit with the West Indies side, who had committed, I think, pretty much the same breaches just 3 weeks earlier than Pakistan had. And that meant that they wanted to press down on Pakistan quite hard. So New Zealand cricket, but more so the Ministry of Health in New Zealand, wanted to put a stop to this, and as a result, they punished Pakistan by not allowing them to practice in their bubble as a group until, I believe it was the final day of quarantine,
literally the
where
last
they were
day. Exactly, literally the last day.
Yeah. absolutely allowed to practice. So I think it all starts from there. But I don't want these to come across as excuses for not doing well. Personally, I think that these kind of concepts are marks of professionalisation. Now, if we compare them to other sides in the world, everybody seems to be committing breaches of some sort. The Indian side have just committed
I was about
breaches
to mention the Australian and Indian side as well. Exactly. That's exactly what's happening these days.
They've had breaches. Jofra Archer, himself did not really have knowledge and committed a breach in England's home summer. Then Chris Lynn and Dan Lawrence committed a breach at the BBL as well. This is a really difficult concept. So this shouldn't be an excuse. However, if you do have the privilege to play professional sport, then you need a level of professionalism that adequately represents yourself as a person, your team ethos, and your country. And in my opinion, Pakistan failed from that outset. So then, they had very minimal time to practice together. The Pakistan board actually requested the cancellation of one of the tour matches. And leading up to the series, Pakistan had one inter-squad match between themselves and one match against New Zealand 11 as a warm-up before launching straight into the T20s. So it's been a go tour. It's already over and it feels like it just started. There have been a lot of difficulties and trials and tribulations off-field as well as on. But I think that these are the concepts that show you the measure of teams, the measure of professional outfits, the measure of management. And in my opinion, the Pakistan side have sadly failed all of these measures on this tour.
All right, how about we talk about the last match, probably the last test match that happened, and New Zealand coming up to a point of 659 and declaring themselves the entire match, and then letting Pakistan play. I think at this point, declaring a match, obviously kind of a very clear option to us that they're mentally ready, and that they're out there to ensure that they take as many wickets as possible. Because when it comes to Test cricket, it's always about the bowling side to ensure that the bowlers take more of the wickets. So what do you think? Where did Pakistan go wrong? Not even learning in the second innings of being on the defensive side and saving wickets and trying to score as much as runs that they could, because it was the last of the last days of the tour, right? So it definitely gave them the idea of all the way having those T20 matches and the first test, and then coming down to this current second test in the second innings.
So personally, I'm probably less disappointed in Pakistan's performance at the Hagley Oval than I was in the first test at Mount Maunganui. Going into foreign conditions, you have to understand those conditions, and I don't think that Pakistan did that very well. New Zealand, from the outside, I think to many of us analysts and people who enjoy the game, looks a very different cricketing wicket than the country actually is. Mount Maunganui is a dry, slow, low pitch that offers a lot of assistance to spinners. The pitches start to break down usually about midway through day 3. And I think that's actually what happened this test as well. Maybe the beginning of day 3 is when we started to see a little bit of turn. That was, if Pakistan had researched their situation that they were going into, probably Pakistan's best opportunity to win one of the test matches that they've been scheduled to play. The Hagley Oval is a ridiculous ground. Since 2014, where New Zealand have been playing tests on it, it is almost exclusively a fortress. I believe New Zealand have lost one match only and drawn one at this ground. So this is a bit of a fortress. Hagley is what outsiders traditionally think of as a Kiwi wicket. A lot of assistance seam, quite a green top, and then flattens out nicely depending on the weather for batting.
I mean, come to think of it, you're absolutely right. With regards to even bowling, I mean, Kyle Jamieson kind of ensured and proved it to all out there. Like you said, that if you look at more of the spinning side could have done a lot of wonders. We literally lacked, like, the amount of, as we were discussing even yesterday with regards to the team members, like for instance we had Muhammad Abbas, who was absolutely predictable when it comes to the bowling side. But even when it comes to the batting side, because when it comes to Pakistan, people always think of them as more competent on the bowling end and not on the batting end. But yet again, we have the results with us, which is definitely disappointing, not only for us, because when it comes to our support to the team, it becomes very emotionally strong for us.
Pakistan supporters are amongst the most passionate in the entire world, and I think that in general if you're a Pakistan cricket fan, because we have, over the course of both of our lifetimes, seen so many miraculous Pakistani moments that you expect from nowhere. So I think it's created a little bit of a problem for Pakistan fans. It makes you think that you should be more competitive in situations where, logically speaking, you can't be. This was always an exceptionally difficult tour from the outset. New Zealand have not been beaten in a home test in a significant amount of time.
Yeah,
and they're getting
since 2017, if I'm not wrong, I was going through the stats, yes, since 2017.
Yeah, absolutely. They're exceptionally strong at home. A very strong Indian test side came here approximately this time last year, and New Zealand sent them home, without a single victory. And that's just what the outfit, the Black Caps, have done over the last few years. And it's for a variety of reasons, things that we should look at as Pakistan supporters. One of the major issues with world cricket is a big disparity in resources for Test cricket. Now, Pakistan does not have the resources of the big three countries in a number of ways, but nor does New Zealand. So what New Zealand are doing right now is showing us exactly how to maximize their limited resources. And that is exactly something that Pakistan needs to be thinking about doing as well. In some manner, we are much more resource rich than New Zealand. New Zealand is an exceptionally small country of only 5 million people, and cricket is not the sport that captures the soul of the country. Rugby is still the major sport in this country. For Pakistan, for the majority of us, if we're interested in sports, if we find ourselves athletic, then cricket is the thing that naturally comes to our mind. It's absolutely a burning passion in the country.
All right.
So in theory,
as you mentioned, Tasneem, that we need to maximize the resources being this country. We'll take a quick short break, and as we come back, we continue more about this discussion with Tasneem Khan. See you guys after the break. Welcome back, guys, to the Sports Insight. And yes, we were talking about Pakistan versus New Zealand, but not to forget that Sri Lanka versus South Africa was also something that was a major blow that recently happened. I mean, yesterday, which South Africa won by 10 wickets. We still have with us Tasneem Khan. So, Tasneem, as we were discussing the whole idea of Pakistan versus New Zealand, on the contrary, if you look at the situation right now, it was South Africa versus Sri Lanka, and obviously South Africa won by 10 wickets in their second test series as well, and obviously South Africa won both of the test series. So what do you think about the whole situation? Like, for instance, if we talk about Sri Lankan's captain, who actually scored a century, but at the end of it all, the team had to collapse, but they at least tried as a whole team. For us, when I look back into the performance given to the boys of our cricket team, so I always see that there is, sometimes there is not a complete commitment towards each other or the team. Sometimes you feel you can always find that positive vibe to the team members. So what do you think? How do you see us lacking specifically the captaincy part, which kind of trickled down Pakistan cricket team to lose maybe the second test match as well?
So I'm not sure I entirely agree with that the Pakistan team don't necessarily play for each other. I haven't seen that for myself, and I've spent a lot of time around the team. I think that there are additional pressures that our media and our fans put on the Pakistan side that maybe we don't do the same in other countries, that I've seen up close and personal in terms of their cricketing culture. Definitely doesn't happen in New Zealand, doesn't happen in England. We're a little bit different from other cricket fans in a sense. I think Mohammad Rizwan, in his first stint as international captain, being called up to the test captaincy in a very difficult circumstance, did something exceptional. He has now achieved 5 half-centuries in a row.
True.
He might not necessarily get to be a hundreds man, but don't forget that it was only a short time ago that Pakistanis thought Mohammad Rizwan couldn't even bat, and now he's done it again and again on very difficult wickets against exceptional bowling.
Right.
So for me, that is personal responsibility that Mohammad Rizwan has taken.
True.
I also think that Mohammad Rizwan is an exceptional team man. So in a difficult situation where you've got a captain who's struck by injury, and not only is he a captain, he is one of Pakistan's most important players. He's just come off of a home test series where he's averaging 200 runs. So that loss of Babar Azam was always huge.
Right.
It was huge as a batsman. I don't think it was as significant as a captain. Rizwan does not have international experience in the matter, but he does have domestic experience. And Rizwan was actually one of the names very seriously considered for the captaincy position when Babar was granted it. So for me, captaincy is not a problem. Rizwan stood up again and again. One thing, however, I did see was in Pakistan's second test match, their first bowling innings, approximately the time that Kane Williamson and Henry Nicholls started getting too much for the Pakistani bowlers, I saw Mohammad Rizwan's shoulders slump. His physical energy changed, and that infiltrated into his team. Some of it was coming after a lot of no balls, a lot of wide deliveries, a lot of things that you are disappointed to see. Anyone who's captained at any level can tell you it really hurts to see your team do that when you know they're better than that. However, that is not a physicality that you can embody, because then it seeps through to the rest of your team as well. So that for me was inexperience, and that was a shame. I would like to see better from Rizwan in terms of that energy and that momentum that we then gave to the Black Caps. They were already doing exceptionally well, but that energy change that came in the Pakistan side, you just hand over the momentum to someone else, and you're effectively conceding at that stage. Kane Williamson is not an easy batsman to get on top of for anybody. There are much better bowlers than the inexperienced Pakistani unit that we've seen in front of us who have struggled. But nevertheless, that energy shift that happens, I think everything changes. So for me, the captaincy was not a major issue. I also don't think that it's a case that Pakistan players aren't playing for each other.
But absolutely, thank you for the wisdom though. But to be honest, when it comes to the pitches, let's talk about that. Because when it comes to Pakistani batsmen facing balls that are shorter deliveries, like for instance, all sorts of short deliveries are technically very hard for us. We are not really used to the pitches, and not only that, the other thing that 9 drop catches is a big number besides all the misfielding, right? So when it comes to that energy of collateral work as a team, so obviously anybody watching the match would be in tears, right? And then coming up to a point of instantaneously not even continuing to score as much as they can. I mean, no one even crossed 50s, in their second innings from Pakistan.
Yeah. I think you've mentioned a couple of very important points. Let's talk about the dropped catches first.
Please.
For me, dropped catches are such a basic concept of your cricket that when you play from a young age, these are things that are drilled into you at such a young age. This is before you're a teenager. You were taught that catches win matches and drops are unacceptable. At this stage, they're completely unacceptable. And although every team has fielding blunders, that is not beyond the realms of even excellent safe hands. There's a difference between fielding blunders being your norm and them being an exceptional occurrence. I think Pakistan has really suffered since the loss of Steve Rickson as a fielding coach, and having a very specialized and tough hand of a fielding coach is probably really, really important to the Pakistan team. And I do think part of that is basics, and I think another part of that is momentum and confidence. These are jarring moments when you do something like drop a catch. You feel your face go red and you feel like you can't continue, but Pakistan players have to become capable psychologically of shaking it off and leaving it outside of them so they can move on for the next delivery. And I think that is something that really set apart the two teams. New Zealand aren't going to drop catches. They're especially not drop very easy catches and not going to have so many drop catches in a match. For me, the number of no balls really stood out. It was very difficult to watch because although it's a young unit, it's a relatively inexperienced unit. Again, that's about basics. That's about knowing your run up. It's about marking yourself. It's about getting your momentum going and keeping consistency. I spoke to a friend, Ian O'Brien, who obviously played for the Black Caps as well. And he said that main issue with no balls is just relaxing. So he has a point here. You can see Pakistan's entire body energy change and shift. They all stiffen up. Their faces go dejected and then things start to go to hell. But these are basics, and a strength in a basic attack is what we need to go back to thinking about. You're not going to get these mistakes made by other teams. I don't think I've ever seen Australians make basic mistakes. A couple of run-out opportunities that were missed as well. Some direct hits would have been nice. It's a holistic problem, but I do think that a big component of it isn't necessarily your technical skills, but it's much more the psychology of the sport. But touring requires this. Touring is a really hard thing to do, to go across the world away from home, live in a hotel, be completely disconnected from reality and your home, just
Right.
go on a cricket field with form. However, this is what these guys are supposed to be doing professionally. If
Absolutely.
you want to be a strong touring side, you need to be a strong side in your mentality. But more than anything else, you need to be psychologically confident and shake things off when mistakes happen. And unfortunately, we didn't see that. You mentioned that the batsman, nobody crossed 50 in the second innings.
Yeah.
I think after that absolute beatdown of a batting innings from New Zealand, there has to be some part of you that is mentally on a plane home already.
Yeah.
You know, you're already one down in a series and you've just faced an absolute onslaught from Kane Williamson and Henry Nicholls.
Right.
Henry Nicholls had a little bit of a lucky innings where Pakistan left a lot of opportunities, failed to convert them.
Right.
But then Henry took advantage of that and he went on to bat and strike the ball quite
And
well.
that's exactly
particularly,
that actually builds more of the confidence up for the batsmen when they realize that they're getting extra chances. They'll definitely avail those
Yeah.
chances. And here we are.
Yeah. And bowling to someone like Henry Nicholls, who was historically strong square of the wicket, is a massive mistake. He has always done well against Pakistan. He was instrumental in New Zealand's win in the UAE a few years ago. And he's had a difficult summer last year, so he's wanting to prove himself. He's got somebody knocking on his selection door, an excellent domestic player in Devon Conway, so he had something to prove, and Pakistan gave him as many opportunities as possible for him to be able to prove it,
True.
which is great for Henry, but a little bit upsetting for a team like Pakistan to see. When you're given so many chances, when you're given so many opportunities, luck isn't going your way. At some point, you have to grab the opportunities yourself and make sure you take them.
True. And one of the most important things that you talked about amongst this entire analysis is one thing that, the psychology part. Because I think
Yeah.
teams' morale need to get up there. And, when you're traveling, when you're away from home, COVID time situations, obviously you're not in your normal state of mind. Because I still remember, even before the series was about to begin, I remember Inzamam also said the same thing. And even Mushtaq Ahmed said the same thing, that, it's going to be a mental battle, not only a physical battle.
Yeah, absolutely. And these pitches are notoriously difficult as well. So you're already going into a country with that in mind.
Right.
That, hey, we're playing on some of the allegedly greenest tops in the world.
Right.
These guys have some things that are really going to test our defenses, and look at where we're already weak. Kyle Jamieson's record against left-handers is absolutely exceptional, and it was exceptional before he went into this series as well.
Right.
The Kiwi bowling attack has everything to test you. Neil Wagner, who's an absolute enforcer, bowling on 2 broken toes, and you couldn't even tell from the way that he was bowling at the mount that there was anything wrong with him. Southey and Bolt, who are arguably alongside Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Hall, the greatest new ball bowlers that we're watching. And Colin de Grandhomme was obviously injured for this series, but he was very aptly replaced by Daryl Mitchell for the second test, another domestic hero for New Zealand, who has done very well in his home circumstances. And Mitchell Santner for the second test.
Thank you so much, Tasneem, for the entire overall analogy of the match. Thank you for being with us. We'll be switching on to the next news that we really have to talk about besides obviously cricket. Yes, the second news is about Premier League, which is one of the most important news because of the fact that COVID-19 has struck them, and they have actually postponed it 4 Premier League games, which is going to be very tricky for the fact that initially there were 28 positive results that came out of 1,311 results taken during 28th of December to the 31st of December. And now there are 12 more new positive cases from the 984 tests that were conducted from January 1st to January 3rd, which means Everton versus Manchester City on the 28th of December, Tottenham versus Fulham on the 30th of December, and Burnley versus Fulham also on the 3rd of January, all forced to be closed down, postponed, and they will definitely be telling the whole situation later for the fact that, the outbreak is still in their city and in Fulham. So let's hope that, this COVID situation gets under control, because apparently some situation is coming, like a tier 5 lockdown is something that is being planned in the UK. So it could definitely affect Premier League with regards to, all these matches that were really, really planned. So we just need to hope and see that, everything goes well with the Premier League lineups, because if they don't really control this COVID situation right now, it can definitely go out of hand. So that's one of the important news that was out there. And yes, one most important, the last news of the day would be that ex-lead Rhino skipper, yes, he is actually forced to retire because of concussions. Well, not to forget that there's a motor neuron disease that actually comes up with these footballers when they play. They have so much of interaction with different rugby players, and a lot of falls that actually bring them to a point of creating that problems in their head. So Stevie Ward has been going through this entire situation, and he's a young chap, and he's not only done that, but he's already won 2 grand finals and 1 Challenge Cup for his team, which is like, he obviously said this in his words, and I wanted to quote, that I have come to the conclusion that after over 11 months of severe symptoms, I need to give this injury the respect and at times it deserves, as I cannot push my health and my brain to any further risk. And determined. Why? Because unfortunately, this is the standardized perspective of major research that actually came out recently was that all the MNDs, which is the motor neuron disease, is basically something that affects a rugby player 5 times more than it does to anybody else, and obviously it's fatal. So we wish him the very best. We hope that he gets recovered fast and obviously is fit and fine. He needs to respect himself and his body. But anyways, guys, thank you very much for being with us on the show today. We will definitely be catching up with you guys soon. Thank you very much. Till then, bye-bye.